what I thought we'd go ahead and do next is I thought we'd get into swatching the colors. I thought we'd swatch them together, but as I go along, I thought that I would give the benefit of my opinion. And also what some of my experiences with these colors have been. And this way you can also get a feel for the vibrancy and for the opacity. I went ahead and I put a little square of ink. This is my black Pigma Micron ink, and I allowed it to dry so we can get an idea for the transparency. I'm expecting all of these colors to be very transparent because or most of them at least, because I will give Winsor&Newton credit for that. They definitely tend to have very vibrant, very transparent colors. So the first color that I'm going to swatch is the lemon. This is a nickel lemon yellow. And this is one of the colors that I used for my demonstration. I do not buy this color. I've never purchased this color for myself, except that it came in this set. Now, one of the reasons is because in general, as you'll be able to see, it's quite opaque and it is a little bit dirty of a color. It's not my favorite color, but I did find that when I used it very sheer and very diluted, I was able to get a relatively transparent yellow with it. And it was very soft and buttery, and I actually appreciated it for the painting that I did. But in general, I would prefer something a little bit brighter and more transparent, like an Azo or a Hansa yellow. Here I have the Winsor yellow. This is going to be much warmer than the lemon, which is much cooler. It's a nice strong color, and it is very transparent as well, as you'll be able to see. I would call that semi-transparent. It's very clean, it's very vibrant, and it's very pigmented and strong. These are all the pan colors so far, and I'll let you know as I go which one came from a pan and which one came from a tube. This next one is the Winsor Red. They have a habit of putting the word Winsor in front of many of their colors, but this is just a Scarlet Pyrrole, I believe, pigment, or maybe it's a neutral Pyrrole. Yeah, it's got maybe a little bit of blue undertone in it. So it's not going to mix the most clean orange, but I do really love this color, and I would absolutely purchase this for myself. This is going to be another semi-transparent pigment. You can see that it is very, very vibrant, very, very strong and saturated, and I do have to give Winsor&Newton credit for that color because they did execute it very, very well. I also noticed that the pigment is very finely milled and lays down very smooth on the paper. The next color that I have here is Permanent Rose, and I do really like Winsor&Newton's take on this. I have this in both that half pan and the tube watercolor, and this is about half empty. I've used quite a bit of it. It's my second favorite Permanent Rose. I think that M. Graham's is my first favorite, but you can see very transparent, very, very transparent, and it's just lovely, and I'll have some comparisons to that color later on in the video. The next color that I have is Quinacridone Magenta, and this one is out of a tube. This is one of my favorite colors of all time from Winsor&Newton, and you could see here that I completely used up this 5 milliliter tube, and I did go ahead and repurchase it in the large tube to put on my main permanent porcelain palette. And I'll always repurchase this color because it is the most vibrant magenta that any brand has to offer, in my opinion. M. Graham just does not offer a color like this. Daniel Smith's I found to be just a little bit dull compared to this one, so they do magenta the best, in my opinion. You can see that it's definitely cooler than that Permanent Rose, and because they're both quinacridone colors, and everything here is single pigment. They do a lot of single pigment colors. Glaze is beautiful, beautiful glaze color. The next one that I have is Winsor Violet. Now, this is one that I've purchased in a tube, and what I went ahead and did is I mixed in a few drops of honey into this when I put it into the pan so that it would re-wet and reactivate easier, because this particular one and many of the Winsor & Newton tubes, they don't have enough glycerin in them. So I think that's because they want you to buy their half pans. So because there's not enough glycerin in them, they tend to crack or fall out or dry into really hard rocks, really hard cakes. So not all of them. The quinacridones do pretty well, but definitely the more earth or heavy mineral colors are going to dry into super hard rocks, especially that Viridian. So you need to add a little something like some honey or glycerin into the pan. Oh, that is ultramarine violet. Ultramarine violet, yes. Okay. Well, I messed that up. Hold on. Hold on. Okay, so I messed this up. This is ultramarine violet, not Winsor violet. So I'm going to put Winsor violet next door here, which also I have from a tube, and you'll be able to see the difference immediately between Winsor violet and ultramarine violet. See how that is almost black in mass tone? I'm actually going to rinse the brush out and get some plain water so that I can dilute that color a little bit so you could just see that beautiful amethyst-like purple, and it's so strong and so saturated. It's beautiful, and it is also crystal clarity and transparency. It is just absolutely beautiful. So these two colors are switched. These are wrong. The titles are wrong here. I accidentally skipped ahead one, so I apologize for that. The next color is phthalo blue or Winsor blue. Again, it's just a phthalo blue, nothing special, but they like to put that name Winsor in front of things. So beautiful blue, absolutely beautiful blue. Very transparent, very bold. You really can't mess up a phthalo blue. You really can't. It's quite difficult. The next color I have is actually the aqua green, which is one of their new colors. Well, they're releasing it as new, or recently they did, but it was part of a limited edition collection of colors. I think it was the Twilight collection or something like that. And then they re-released it, and now it's part of their permanent line. So the aqua green is actually a phthalo turquoise kind of, but it is a single pigment, which surprised me, but because it looks like the mixture you'd get from mixing phthalo blue and phthalo green together. I do not have a Winsor & Newton phthalo green to show you today. But this color is absolutely gorgeous, and I've debated whether or not I want to put it on my permanent palette. Only because it is very beautiful, but I know I can mix it from phthalo blue and phthalo green, so I know I don't really need it, but it is very beautiful, very, very strong and saturated as well. I also have their ultramarine blue. This is their French ultramarine blue, so you're going to pay a little bit more for this color. It is very lovely, very transparent, but compared to other ultramarine blues that I own, I have to say that I can just feel with my brush a little bit more filler in that color versus some of my others, particularly the M. Graham, which is the most saturated ultramarine blue that I own and is my favorite. But this does have a beautiful granulation, and I'll be showing a comparison between three different brands on ultramarine blue at the end of this video. The next color I have to show you is their sap green, which is a mixture of phthalo green and their quinacridone gold. Now, their sap green is very beautiful, and it's one of the colors that I used in the painting of the tulip. However, I will say that I found it too vibrant to be believable as a natural kind of earthy green, which is usually what sap green would be. So it needed to be dulled down a little bit in many applications. And I'll also mention that it's not the strongest sap green. It's definitely a little bit weaker than other sap greens I own. I'm thinking Daniel Smith The next color that I have to show you is the yellow ochre, and their yellow ochre, if you use it very lightly, can be more transparent, but in general this is an opaque color, which is fine because yellow ochre tends to be kind of opaque, except for the Daniel Smith's version, I have to say. Daniel Smith's, I don't know what they're doing different, but their yellow ochre is the most transparent, and it is very, very lovely. I also have their Quinn Gold, which is not actually quinacridone gold at all, but rather it is a hue. I do wish, and I've used up this tube, but I do wish that they would make that clearer. Like, call this a Quinn Gold hue on the tube, but they don't. But there's no actual nickel or quinacridone pigment in that mixture. Something to keep in mind. It is very transparent, and it is very, very saturated and a very lovely color. So the next one we're going to swatch out is the Burnt Sienna. Now this one, I have it in both the half pan and the tube. And both of them perform very, very similarly. Their Burnt Sienna is kind of puny, and I've said this in my Daniel Smith review as well when I was comparing it to the Daniel Smith. It's very wimpy. They're not actually using Burnt Sienna at all. They're using PR101, which is, it's rust. It's natural red iron oxide. And that's fine, but you can get PR101 from other brands very strong and saturated. This one is quite wimpy, and that's the strongest I can really get it. I can also feel with my brush that there is more filler in that color. It feels a little bit more gelatinous, like a student grade paint might. And the last one that I have to show you is the Ivory Black, which I have no use for at all. I have no idea what I'm going to do with this color, except tonal studies maybe, I guess. And you can decide how you feel about this one, because I have no opinion really of black watercolor. I would call it semi-transparent. It does seem to granulate, and it looks actually more gray than black most of the time. And I did spray these very well with water before beginning to help them release better. That definitely always helps.